Toulouse-Lautrec down in the bottom.
Well, a woman who escaped from the Moulin Rouge by Toulouse-Lautrec. She's like, I'm free, go for it. So anyway, with this kind of a surreal feeling, and I hope we can sort of be, science fiction-y, surreally humorous. It shouldn't be as boring as it might have been had I just left it with what little we were given as a background. So as an intro, you have your stories. I think everybody here has a story or collections of stories. And it isn't really that hard to turn them into little plays. And usually some longer short stories could actually be a 2-act play, but that would be stretching it. Usually they're what you call a 1-act play. And so this is the way that you can open windows in the story and come up with how you're going to transform it from one genre into another. So I have a few little helpful hints. And John, do you want to speak to any of those? John, are you still here?
Yes, I'm here. I think these are a great way to get some orientation, and I'll be available to anybody who wants to, take the steps into this process. And
can you take an example from something that you had written in one genre and then you made it into a play? Did you ever do that?
No. I would start with a script.
Okay, well, I did. The one that we did in Planet Zoom Players was the H.G. Wells story.
Yes.
It wasn't one that I had written, but it was already out there, published as a story and in the public domain. So we are a new theater group that makes things on Zoom and then puts them out on YouTube videos. And we were looking for only things that were copyright free. So I took The Crystal Egg by H.G. Wells. And it was amazing. We added a narrator for the narration. Basically, it had the anonymous kind of narration, and we just turned that into a narrator character. But there were many things in that story. And when I'm not speaking, maybe I could put the link to that play that we did from that published story. They were summarized, or it would say John, what was his name? Mr. Cave. I can't remember if he had a first name. Mr. Cave was having a friendly talk with Mr. Jacoby. I think that's how his name was pronounced. And
yes.
the two of them were talking, about so-and-so. Well, instead of just having that one sentence summary, you open it up and it could be a whole paragraph of he said, she said, he said, he said. And that's one way you do it. They will sum it up. They had a conversation about his marriage. The policeman accosted him and asked him, blah, 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 about something. And then you turn it into a just stop, and in your head, you hear policeman says what, then the other person answers what. And with that little process, we turned that into a pretty, it sounded like a play. And that's what I mean by enlarging the dialogues or even creating. I should have put create dialogues from summarized conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the next thing is getting your script either staged or online. But these are headers, so we'll go on in more depth. Oh, John, did you have something?
Yeah. So the other thing is when someone picks up a play script and looks at envisioning it on stage, they look for what spectrum is it on, from realism to fantasy, and that is one way to determine how things look, how people speak, how they interact with each other. Most of the short stories in the book are on the realism side, and but the other component that's important and to always have in mind when writing play script is what is the mood that you want to convey. If it's comedy, it wants to be a light mood, and so you're going to avoid certain kinds of interactions that makes comedy less likely to happen, or a laugh not happening. And but it could be sad. It could be, you know, any of the descriptors for moods. And it's kind of like a piano piece. The first note, that key note, sets the tone for the whole piece. And so the mood in a play is that keynote.
That's true. And what you say is also true that, oh, and I skipped, you know, the genre part. What type of a play is it? And it can be a mix now. Remember that. I know you know that, dramedy and so on. But looking for scenes, that was the one that I think we just passed over. When I was reading that story by H.G. Wells, the scenes came fairly naturally, I think. And it is in the, although it's science fiction, it's fairly linear in terms of time and everything. So the scenes came when people were leaving the shop or going to a new place or time changes. As I recall, you don't recall it any differently, do you, John?
No, that's right.
Okay, so that's one of the things. You'll have to mark up your copy of your story, maybe with red pen or marker in the computer, where the scenes you think they're going to come in, because that's the beat in the play. It's a scene, and then the lights go down, and then scene, you know. Anything else you want to say about looking for scenes, John?
No, but I think what I'll do is I'll make up a like a flow chart for, like, you know, to take these ideas you put here, Gloria, and then kind of expand on some of them for, you know, the arc of the play. Even if it's a short play, there's an arc to it, and and so those are all kind of considerations. It's once you start doing it, it becomes a lot of fun to, like, put yourself in the place of an audience, and because there's so much going on. There's the intellectual side, there's the emotional side, there's feeling side of it, and emotion is probably the most important. And that's why most people go to the theater, is to
That's true, but plot is extremely important. And I have a book by R.F. I can't remember her name, but I will send it to everybody who showed. And it's called Writing Plots That Sell. And she was a friend of Ray Bradbury's, this woman, but I just can't think, it's not Rafferty, Rockwell or something is her last name. And she has many different charts of arcs of not plays, but usually films or fiction. And you might want to get it. It would be, I got it for like $2 at Amazon. It's very cheap because it's an old book, but this kind of a book doesn't ever go out of usefulness. And John, that would be essential for us to have at least a model or two of how arcs go. So, okay, so we've talked a little bit about looking for scenes in your story, enlarging your dialogues. Well, staging your script is way down the road. So let's move on to see what I have as the next. It's not moving. Okay, let's try one of the other buttons. Oh.
You know, but one of the things about staging is to do readings, to get some people together and just read it out loud.
And that's what my abstract shapes are saying. You should have fun in a group.
That's right.
So I found it. The buttons are way down here. They're hiding. Okay, so here's where we are. Some of us who haven't done this before may be feeling nervousness. And I think the seaweed used to be nervous, but it's not anymore. So it overcame that. And the way that Ray Bradbury did, whether he was writing a play, which he did write, or whether he was writing fiction, which he wrote a lot of, he would just write anything just to get himself writing. In the morning, you get up, and if you hear a voice from what you were dreaming, you just start quoting it. And then, well, that leads to the next thing, and that leads to the next thing. And it isn't any good. It isn't like you think you're writing a story, but you just have these continuous voices interacting with each other. And you end up writing 4 or 5 pages by noon, you know, or 3 pages of these voices. And his method was that he called it, excuse the expressions, vomiting it out in the morning, then cleaning it up in the afternoon. And so he would vomit it out in the morning, anything that came to his mind, because he was really afraid of having writer's block. And then he would clean it up in the afternoon, which means putting some sort of a logic to it or whatever. And he would do that each morning for a whole week, you know, a work week on weekdays. In the mornings, he would then spew it out again, and it would be more refined because he would be starting from what he had and mess with it and just add crazy things to it. Then in the afternoons of each day, he would clean it up. And it would get more and more refined till Friday. And in a week or two, I think he was churning them out one a week. And he said in one lecture, if you do it by my method, you get 52 stories. Don't write a novel because you take a year or two and you have no idea. You have one chance that your editors will like it and publishers. But with this, you have 52 stories. You can send them out. And some of them have got to be good. A few of them out of 52 must be good. So that's how he became such a prolific writer. And he and H.G. Wells could really churn it out. And it would work, you know, when he did plays. I'm sure he used that method. So here's another helpful hint. And sometimes even that doesn't excite me because I'm very visual. So when I start a story, or in this case, adapting my story, I could start writing the character speeches in different colors and different fonts. You could have pictures of these characters in the story, some in your play script to remind you what they look like. Anything that you do of that kind of a visual nature? Anybody?
I'm
Yeah.
extremely non-visual when I write, to try to figure out how to put a picture or color in there would just, you know, kill the flow if I'm lucky enough to have any.
See, I have both. I work with both sides of my brain, and I'm an artist. So that's why I almost have to do it.
I am not an artist. I'm just, you know, hopefully a writer.
In fact, this is one of my pictures that I gave to somebody. It's on an old salmon. You know, when you get smoked salmon, you get these little foils, and I paint things on them. So this is R2-D2. So, you know, you want to open up your narration, change it in, overcome that narrator voice. Because narrators can be interesting. Like the one Holden Caulfield, whatever his name was in Catcher in the Rye. But they also tend to be droning on. And when you get into a play, you don't want a narrator stepping to the front of the stage through most of the play. You want the characters to be engaging with each other. How about you, John? What do you say?
I think he left for the airport.
Oh, okay. Anybody? Well, MaryLou, you write plays.
I really like the idea that you said about color. I've never used that before, but I'm actually, I guess maybe by nature that is my first way to write. So when I'm working with a short story group at the library and with the Goodman Theater right now, and I actually have to switch mine frequently from dialogue to monologues because I automatically just start in conversational type mode. And for me, it's just always been a matter of and I had put in the chat, like, to me, scenes just jump out. Like that scene just sells itself and you just jump into it and start talking. And I definitely am of the vomit class. I mean, you put it all out there and then you just go back and you clean it up, because if you restrict yourself and I know people who, I spent 4 hours finding that one word. Yeah, that's not how I'm going to do it. I'm going to put 40 words down there and then the one that's best is going to come out afterwards. But I can't be that slow about it. I just have to let it flow. Otherwise I'm in big trouble.
Right. And so you can take the narrator in many stories, and he's describing meetings. I always say I should say that narrator, not make it a gender. That narrator is describing meetings, places that the narrator interacted, and that's what you open up. It was monologues coming in your story from a narrator, and then as you find your scenes in the story, you also turn those monologues into true dialogues. So you can look through our stories in Children of Steel. Some people had a lot of narrator voice, and others already had a lot of dialogues. I think my story had a lot of dialogue in it because I do plays and I was thinking of it almost as a play. So, but it doesn't matter. If it didn't have them, they're easy to find. You just look where it says the protagonist went into the store and then he said a lot of things to the storekeeper. Well, what were those things? And who's the storekeeper? You give them a name. If they were just very vaguely sketched, the other half of the conversation, you start to build those characters, give them names. We had some in the H.G. Wells story that was a shopkeeper and a woman in the woman in the newspaper office, and we built them into people, not with a huge backstory. It wasn't like Stanislavski method, but we built them into people so that they could be the other half of the conversation. Anybody else want to discuss what you think you're going to do or what you have done when you tried to write a play?
Cowley, I've never written a play before, and my story is like a big monologue with some dialogue and scene work. So I'm
Well,
thinking,
Patrick, that's fine. You just heard me that's how you do it.
yeah,
That story by Wells, and I will send it to all of you so you can compare the story and see where we found the scenes. And I opened up the narrator just droned on in that story. And we did have to give names to some of the people. It might be mentioned as a friend. Well, we gave a friend a name. We gave people who were not even bit players, they were like extras in the story and they became full characters. So you can do it. You do it once and you'll have the hang of it.
One suggestion that I have is that write as just you're flowing, like go at least 4 scenes type of thing. And then instead of starting with that first scene, that just becomes backstory that you'll build into it somewhere. Actually jump in at that 3rd scene where you're in the middle of an action, because that is, if you think about plays that you really enjoyed or movies that you enjoyed, it's when it just grabs your attention, just literally pulls you out of your seat to pay attention because you're in the middle of something that's really exciting or scary or dramatic. But and then those other scenes can come in later in other ways, but actually try and jump at the action, because that is the first impression you're making to your audience. And if you grab them right away, you've got them.
Well, I think that's true in some cases, or maybe most cases, but in our H.G. Wells play, we wanted to set the scene. That was very important to get people out of the world of 2024 and get them into Victorian England. And so we had Mr. Cave's shop window, the facade of his shop, and we had animations on this, and we animated the characters, not full animation, but they kind of slid, into the shop. And we had the music, a little bit of the Victorian music hall music. And so in that sense, when you're doing something with a historical world, you're taking them out of this world into another world. And that was a very slow paced world. So we wanted our audience to, get out of this zip, 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 jump cut, world we're in now into a whole different world. It isn't science fiction, but it's just as strange as science fiction to try to equal the pace of what went on. So again, you can compare the story with that play. So they both work, and it depends if you're doing something contemporary or even something that depends more on a high point opening. That's fine. Okay, so the next one is, once you get all your script written, you start to recruit people, friends, family. You may see people running away from you on the street or ducking into stores, looking the other way. But if you can get some good volunteers.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
As far as writing a play, would you consider time? Let's say a spotlight theater production versus an actual play with, 2 scenes, 4 scenes intermission. I mean, what are we
Could you explain for us what a spotlight theater production is in terms of time?
Well, we've had them at the university here where a spotlight theater would be 45 minutes.
Mhm. And is it usually a one act?
Yeah, it could be. It could go from 45 minutes to an hour with maybe a split in between a half hour.
Mhm.
Versus say if I went to a production in the main theater where you'd have act one, act two, then intermission, 3 and 4. And then in the afternoon, it could be 2 hours. I don't know. I mean, there's different, it varies on the genre, the focus in that. So
Well, I understand what you're saying, and often it's more or less defined for you by the people that are the play group or the facility that's putting it on. They have it all set
Mhm.
up to be a series of certain length. So you may have the full, you may have to change. In fact, you may have to adapt your play to be shorter, you know, to fit what they already have going. But that's part of just adapting your play first from a story and then to suit various venues and what they want. But again, cast is important, and that's something that can either get you into a venue or not. And there's sort of a rule of thumb, you know, for most plays, I forget, it's like 9 to 11. If you get much beyond that, then, you know, you may be pushing it at 11. But if you can combine a lot of people or several of the roles into one actor does 2 roles, then it goes back to more desirable. And they also need to know if you're willing to have people who are unlike the person who is being depicted in the play. Are you open to what do you call that? New casting. I forget what the term is, where you can have someone who's old or who's a different race playing a character who's obviously a different race. And they all want that, or most of the theaters want that now, the freedom to cast the way that they want. So the combining roles, I'd say, is think about that as soon as you can after you have all your characters. Who isn't on the stage with character one and could be the same person, and then you can combine those two. Any other comments on that? So, you know, theater companies are pretty small, especially the community theater. They don't have that many backups, or I think they do if they're running for paying audiences. They like to have all the roles with someone to what do you call it, an understudy to fill in, so that when you start to get up to 9 characters, you're looking at maybe 6 understudies if some of them are combined. Okay, so oh, we're at this. These are, by the way, these are what do you call it? Artificial intelligence, or I would call it more art, algorithm generated art. So they're kind of strange looking, these people, because I could put those in and they're not copyright protected. So you may see some strange looks there. So get your friends and family, or if you have a local theater company or a reading company, there are some cities that have groups of readers who are actually looking for things to read. And there's Playwright Helper, I think it's called. And they actually have theaters that want plays just so they can read them. I had one experience with one of those, but they didn't, it was a comedy and they didn't do any rehearsals. They sort of read it cold. And with comedy, that's not the best. It was nice to hear it read, but with comedy, you miss a lot of the beats if you read it cold. So you might ask these theater companies, will you rehearse? Or look for it if it says they will rehearse it, even if they're just going to do a reading with no props or anything. And then the next thing is to go to Playwright Helper. And I may have the name slightly off. I'll try to find the link to it. And they have a whole calendar page of things coming up in the next month. You may get 20 opportunities for all different level, different length, different genre of plays. And they are theaters actively looking for scripts. So you start sending them out. And you'll get a lot of rejections. Mostly you won't even hear from them. I get happy if I even hear and say, well, you know, it had a good something in it. But a lot of them they get so many that they don't even answer you. But that's part of this adventure. And so it's good to share with your friends if you're sending out a lot, even if you're getting a lot of rejections, because you'll find everybody else is too. And that's a good part of when you meet with your other creative friends. Any other suggestions about sending out? That's part of the whole process.
Well, you know, as a prose writer, I write little shorts. You know, sometimes they're prompts for groups or little, you know, online lessons or whatever. And you know, there's just lists and lists. There's this thing for prose writers called submittable.
Oh, sure.
And you just look, sometimes like somebody was looking for a fairy tale redone and I happen to have one, so I sent it in. It feels so good just to send it. I mean, usually there's a rejection down the road. I've been lucky enough to send to places where they actually, you know, talk to you about rejection. They say, you know, we won't use your piece. Thank you very much. And that to me is as good a blue ribbon as anything.
And sometimes they'll even say something that you know they looked at it, something about your piece, or that it's something that we see the value of this that's not being done. That really feels good, even if they go, but in the end, it didn't quite suit us.
It's a real high just to send something in and then to say then you get a reminder 2 months later, we didn't use your piece, but thank you very much. And it's just like I did something for myself. Is there something as playwright, this playwright helper, is that like
helper is like that, yeah. And I actually, as I say, it was the Cape Cod readers or something, and they actually took my little play, and it was my 10-minute, it was actually, I think, the one that I made into the video, Rock the Nuclear Clock, that's now done as a video on YouTube. And they read it, but they missed a lot of the beats because they didn't rehearse. You can't just cold read comedy. It comes out, you know, and then they stumble on some words, because there are always sentences in a play that it looks simple like any other sentence, but for some reason people stumble on certain words. Well, they were doing all of that, the stumbling and missing the beats. And I thought I was going to have a really good experience out of, well, whatever it was. I shouldn't mention any names, but it was an East Coast, sounded fairly prestigious little reading group, and
wow.
but they didn't rehearse. And so, you know, the thing is, especially, well, I don't know if it's more important for a comedy, but try to find out if it's going to be cold read, or if you probably could still give it to them, but any reading, I guess, is better than just sitting there.
Gloria, is there a website for that, for Playwright Helper?
Yeah, I said I'm going to try to find it. I'm not going to do it in the chat. I'll do it in email. I'll send you the original story by Wells. I better start writing this down. And then the adaptation, so you can make a comparison how that was done. And then I will send you the Playwright Helper thing. So let me write these down. Just go ahead, Joan, say some other things.
Oh, no, I just was wondering if we have any kind of timeline for us, or now we're just like sort of planting the seeds in our minds to let them ruminate or germinate or something or other. It's Saturday afternoon. I have no vocabulary whatsoever, but you know, this is just sort of to begin, you know, to begin the process of thinking about this, but we don't have any kind of timeline, which makes me just very happy. But do we have a timeline on this of some kind of
timeline?
Well, are we going to report into each other? Are we going to, you know, we're doing this as a group, right? So are we going to report our progress at some point, or check in with each other, something like that?
That all remains to be seen. Let me see. I think we're pretty much done. Oh, I had this. Well, this is kind of just something I put in. It's sort of how you can have a fill-in at the end of your reading, where people might say, you know, they felt from 1 to 10, enjoyed it, whatever. And then you can keep your little chart of how that one did. And that's all I have to say about that.
Hmm.
Okay, well, this one I thought was funny. I asked for a woman writing with a pen, and it looks like, this is one of the AI images. It looks like she's doing a Vulcan salute instead of writing. But that's okay, you know, everything fits this afternoon or morning, whatever it is in your zone. I thought this was a fun ending. Okay, so we get a Vulcan salute instead of a woman writing with a pen. And now I'll get out of this so we can see each other. And hopefully we can see each other. Stop share. And here we all are. Yeah, it's all entirely up to you. We can just email back and forth and decide if we want to do another Zoom session. I think these are actually better than, they call it asynchronous or synchronous. When you're live with each other, you're synchronous. When you're emailing back and forth, you're asynchronous. And I think the synchronous are much more energizing. Do you all agree?
I agree. I
Yes.
agree.
Yeah, I think, you know, just emailing, this is what I did this week, you know, and then one person answers and the email back. So what we can do is wait a month or two, do some things, and then somebody start the ball rolling on email. Should we set up another one? And, you know, when do we want to have it? Because I may forget. I'm getting to that age, you know. And
So in terms of timeline, though, are we also, I mean, when are we looking at having a complete product? Are we talking, you know, months or a year from now?
well, it's all depending on how far you get in what time frame for each of you. I can't, you know, I don't know. Are you, I guess you're looking for some kind of due dates. And in that case, I don't
Well,
want
we've got
I don't
20
want to frighten
stories.
anybody off. That's my, Karen, that's my worry is I start to set a due date and people flake off. Oh, she's setting due dates, you know.
Well, can I chime in on timeline? I'm on my iPhone, but I went on my laptop, and I guess there is 10-minute plays, full-length plays, and 1-act plays.
Oh, are you at
So,
Playwrights Helper? Have you found it?
yeah,
Okay,
I put it on my
put the
laptop.
link in just for those that want it right now then in the chat.
Okay. But I guess that answered my question about how long the script would be. Because it says there's such a thing as a 10-minute play.
There is. They'll
Yeah,
let
I
it
didn't
go to
know that.
12,
I mean,
you know, they don't really need 10, 12. They'll, but don't.
1-act play.
Mhm.
I have no idea. This is all new, writing a play.
Oh, it's fun. I think when I did stories for a while, and then when I went to plays, I went, oh, much more fun for crazy people. And I'm one of the crazy people, so I thought, oh, this is much more fun. Plus, plays, if anybody does them, you're not just doing it between you, yourself, and you. You have all these other crazy people you have to deal with, and then it can get very crazy, especially if you do a staged reading where there's a lot of personalities involved, and you know.
You know, there are opportunities. It just occurred to me, I'm a member of the Marble Collegiate Church Arts Fellowship, have been for years. One of the best known graduates is MaryLou Maples, but anyway,
Story
they have, and I'm sure that the reason I'm talking about this, I'm sure there are a lot of a lot of organizations that do this, churches, etc. Settlement houses, our settlement house has plays, you know, by locals and all that. And there are opportunities like next year in June, my arts fellowship will have their annual arts display. They have a show for about 3 hours, and there are people who play instruments, and I'm just a writer, but they're incredible poets and a lot of plays. And you've just given me a deadline, which I didn't think I would do anything with this when I stepped in this afternoon, but you've given me a deadline for the Marble Arts for next June. Absolutely. Yeah. Three
great.
character play. My scene about the flying saucers. Yes. I'm
Oh,
gonna
definitely.
work on that.
Well, Howard is answering me, and maybe we can hang in here for a little while and actually get some input from someone with huge theater. Let me just I wish he had called, but he emailed. So let me get back to Howard and send him the link.
Glow, I unfortunately have to leave to make a
So
12
you
o'clock
can catch it, okay, but
lunch.
you can catch it when we put it up on YouTube. So anything.
Okay, goodbye, everybody. Have a great day.
Yeah,
Bye.
hang on,
Bye-bye.
Howard's
Send
coming.
us something to read.
Okay.
Bye. Bye, Patrick.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Okay, here's Howard. Let's see. And I'm gonna say, sent you the link, wherever he is, wherever that message is. He thought I just wanted him to review the PowerPoint, duh, but anyway. Okay, so that was my fault.
Gloria, for the idea I just got, I thank you again. You've done so much for my life, really. I'm serious. You have all these ideas and projects, and it's been really healthy and wonderful. Opened a
I've
whole
been
new
a thing
window
of
for me.
pieces and patches all my life. I would do one genre of art, one medium, and I'd go to something.
So I
So
thank you. I thank you for that.
Oh, well, you're all welcome. I mean, I had so many people doing just this for me that it's only payback for, I don't know, this one and that one. And they
So
really
my other question related to timing was we have 20 authors in Children of Steel.
Mhm.
And so are you looking for something from each one of us?
Oh, no, they're not all gonna respond. Look at how few of us showed up. The thing is,
Right.
it's the ones who actually, there's attrition. Anybody who's taught for 26, 30 years like I did, you ask for volunteers in a class of 30, you'll get 5. So we can just assume that most people won't take, even if it's presented and helps them step by step, they won't give the time to do it. They're busy. People do
Yeah,
have lives.
well-
Like when I call you, Karen, I always have to remind myself, now remember, Karen is busy. She's got a lot of things going. It isn't just your little project. Well, that's what's going on with all of them. And in fact, Karen, we lost Gary. I don't know what has happened to Gary Public Library. They were all enthused. They were going to do a book launch, and I don't know the writer and the librarian who were cooperating on it. I had sent them the books, sent them a banner, and then nothing. It got all silent. So I don't know. Maybe they're going to do it during the year further down, and they just got tired of it. All my little requests. How's it going? How's it going? But Gary is just incognito right now. So even
Mhm.
among these people who seem very committed and the first and Phyllis, the writer, came to one of our other Zoom things, and she's for it, but you don't know, and you can't interpret silence either. That's another life lesson. Don't interpret silence because you don't know.
Right.
And so they may have a lot on their plate, or they may have decided to do it in the spring and they just don't want to keep corresponding with me because they're very busy, But Gary, I wanted Gary so much to have one of the book launches, and I was going to be there if I could.
Yeah.
So, this is part of life. It's like community theater, book launches, anything you try to plan it's what happens. You get part of the people that you thought you had on board.
I
Mhm.
think once the fall starts again, this is the summertime and people have huge numbers of things to do, getting kids back to school or running around or seeing, traveling, whatever. I think in the fall and as the days grow shorter and colder, I think that, have a better chance of having more people at home at any given time.
Also, I'm going to full disclosure here. I do tend to exhaust people. People just say, Gloria, you're exhausting me. I'm sort of your friend, but back off. So even the guy I work with at IUN, who's very nice at Briscoe, he's like 40 and, decades younger than I. He goes, you're a real trip, if I could bottle this, whatever you got going there. So I guess some people are a bit hyper and that not everybody mixes well with that. So I have to remember, don't send too many emails. Don't, interact too often with people.
Keep sending the emails.
Oh.
Don't discourage yourself from that. That's, I think people are just crazy busy. So if
Yes.
they don't respond, that's what it is, and you just take that in light, but just keep going one
sending 'em
foot
out.
after another.
'Cause I guess they call that lurking. I guess a lot of people are lurking. And, they lurk and they may be interested, but they don't feel they have to reply and say, anything about what you sent out. So yeah, this is very, all of these are good for working in a group. And a lot of us find that very difficult because you do get different styles, how many interactions people want in a given day or in a given week. So you find your own pace to work at. This is a kind of amorphous project in that they're going to mainly work with the students' work, just to be full disclosure. That's what they're concentrating on in the playwright series at the IUN. And we're sort of in the back row. We're off stage. They might do something with us or not.
Gloria, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it occurred to me when in one of your emails, I wasn't sure what you were saying, but I thought that perhaps the students would read the book and
The
choose
students are reading
scenes
the
and do
book.
it for themselves.
Yes,
They would
good.
create the scene for the stage themselves as well.
Right. What the students are going to be doing is using the book in various ways. And that's a great compliment to all of us that have put in time and written this book, to have it taken up by Garen Cycle and the creative writing classes at IUN, to actually officially be using it in those classes. Because I want to say it's good, but part of it is they don't have anything else about people like us. That's not to disparage our book, but it was something they never had. And when I went through that same school, that is my alma mater, there was nothing that related to my life. Nothing. All the way through grad school. Nothing. And so I thought, if I could ever, once I'm retired, I will try to make a bridge for people so they won't feel outside of the world of culture the way I did. It wasn't that I didn't have education and knew things, but it was my setting. Nobody was interested in the setting. And I think if I were a person of a different race, that also carried in the 60s. There were starting to be people of African American in our anthologies, and Hispanics, and Native American, and various, Asian, but that was just starting. But there was still nothing about people who were from the industrial parts of the country. And I think that has to do with the bias against cities and against industry. And it's gotten worse, although I'm all for ecology movements, and I am pro-ecology, and I understand climate change, but that it bleeds onto the people that have to work in these, I don't know how to put it, but it sort of, it covers you in all ways, that you're not suburban, you're not rustic, you're not one of the people that normally we have fiction from, but they don't even want your creative output from you because you're part of that. And I guess it's an underrepresented group that is intentionally underrepresented. So that's a tremendous obstacle for us. And it's one that my best analogy was Southerners were very discounted at the turn of the 20th century. And people thought of it as a cultural wasteland and a backwater, living in the past. And then they found that there were these writers coming out like Faulkner and Ralph Ellison and Zora Neale Hurston and Tennessee Williams a bit later, Flannery O'Connor, and on and on. And they had to change their mind about these people. And I could see that happening for people from the industrial parts. We've been totally silent. Right. And people do use these things. They use steel, they use oil, and they spend all their time dissing the people who work in these industries. And I even made up, try having a week without steel or a week without oil and see what you can do. And people would be amazed. They can't do much. We use a lot of these things. So I think the poem in our book by Mr. Valia was very good. So that puts an extra level of challenge that other writers who are situated differently in our social community don't have to deal with. They may have a different one, that there's so many people from the suburbs writing, how many, suburban, it's all being done. So what hasn't been done? So there's so much of that out there. But we can do it, and it all just comes from enthusiasm and not accepting that you can't do it and you can't get your stuff out there. But remember, that will work against you, the fact that we're from the industrial. Some places they're starting to be interested in it, and that's a new development. But before that, there was no interest. I remember I couldn't even do a paper on Carl Sandburg when I was at Indiana U Bloomington. Dr. Robbins, my professor, said, you don't want to do Carl Sandburg. He's not a good poet. I thought, have you ever been to Chicago? In those days, he was really well known, and he wrote The City of the Big Shoulders. And, oh, no. He's no Robert Frost. He's no Amy Lowell. He's no on and on about East Coast poets. And I felt like I wanted to really, I wasn't rich enough to just challenge him and do it anyway. I caved in and I wrote on somebody else or did something else. And that stuck with me. The fact that this wonderful poet was considered a jerk, and by most of the East Coast critics, and also throug't the country in colleges, because somebody, I forget, Irving, I'll forget the name of those old critics from the 20s and 30s, but at one point they wrote Carl Sandburg off, partly because he did take the side of the working people, and none of them did. They were art for art's sake. I mean, you weren't going to get much of what Carl Sandburg did in Robert Frost. So I recognized all the various streams that were given advantages in the publishing world and the other streams. And I saw that it was like being a salmon swimming upstream. And you have to do it a little at a time. And maybe in your lifetime, you won't see any big turnaround, but at least you'll be helping the younger ones, because it could be very depressing to know that not only were you outside of culture, but Chicago as a whole was considered second rate and not really anything. So.
Gloria, I'm going to have to sign off.
Okay, Karen. Well,
Great,
I hope you enjoyed it.
everybody.
Yeah, take care.
Bon
Okay.
voyage, Karen.
Bon
Bon
voyage.
voyage.
Bon voyage. Yeah.
I'll be back in touch as soon as I touch down in September.
Okay, well, hope you make it in time for the radio show.
Okay. Take
Okay,
care.
well, that was just my little contextualizing historically that we're in a better place. And I think that now the biggest thing is telecommunications. None of that was there. We couldn't find each other, and we can do that now. And we have ever so many ways to go around where they slam a door in our face. That used to be it, like my professor. But now you can go around things and go to a different venue.
Gloria, you just mentioned a radio show.
Indiana University's Literary Evenings, or whatever it's called. And it's going to be in mid-September, I think. I have to look it up. And I'll be getting out more PR about it.
Oh, that's what that is. Okay.
Yeah. It's something that they do from the Humanities, College of Humanities at Indiana U, and they have these radio shows. And Garen Cycle evidently is one of the producers. And so he said, well, we'll let you lead off. We're actually getting the lead off show. And that's even better. We're the first they're going to have. Everybody will be all excited and fresh.
Is it online?
It's going to be, I don't know. It's maybe a podcast. I'm not sure whether it's just, nothing is just radio anymore. So it's probably going to be, you can probably access it on their channel or on your computer. But that's an honored position. That's quite an honor that they're leading off their whole season with us. I think it's called Literary Evenings. Now,
Literary what? What was the title?
Literary Evenings.
Evening, okay.
I don't have the specs, like, do they expect each of us to give a 5-minute reading? Are there no readings? That I cannot answer. But he will be telling me that shortly.
And the date is September.
I don't have the date.
Oh, okay.
I think he gave it to me, but
I'll look it up. I think you sent it
I
to
think I
me
sent
this
it out.
morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, this is part of this whole process. I really hope, it sounds kind of long shot, but I hope that we can interest the trustee in Bloomington, because I think what we're doing would help the whole system of IU. And it certainly would help them to be connected. I mean, the head should be connected to the arms, right? Where the different regionals are all part of the IU system. So that's it. And I hope you enjoyed it. Do you have any wrap-up statements before we go?
I'm looking up the
Really
date.
glad I came.
Well, we're glad you came too, MaryLou, and hope to have you come back. And Sharon, I'm sorry, somehow I didn't get the communication to you in time. And I still don't see Howard, so maybe he'll have to join us next time if he wants to come.
Oh, you know what? I found it. September 18th, Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. I'm not quite sure what it is, but
Put
it
it in the
is an
chat.
English event.
Yeah, that's probably it. I don't, right now it's too
September
hard to run
18th.
this and try to look things up at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm gonna let us go off to our day then, unless there's any other comments or anything.
Thank you, Gloria. It's
Oh,
been
you're
very
very welcome.
interesting and got a lot of new ideas here.
Okay, well, we'll see you soon. Take care.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Have a great